Adequate notice of this public work session and executive meeting setting forth date, time, and location has been provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act of January 12, 2024. I prominently posted a copy on the bulletin board in the lobby of the offices of the Wayne Board of Education, which is a public place reserved for such announcements. Transmitting a copy of the notice to the record, the Wayne Today, tapintoWayne.net, municipal clerk of the district website. Roll call, Mr. Nellis.
Mr. Battishill?
Here.
Mr. Faber?
Here.
Mr. Giordano?
Here.
Mr. Paul?
Here.
Mr. Pavlak?
Here.
Mr. Prasakos?
Present.
Mrs. Rigoloso?
Here.
And Mrs. Winter.
Here.
Dr. Toback.
So good evening. This is a time of the year when various national recognition programs celebrating school programs and school employees happen. So it's important to recognize our employees at the local level. You'll see that for this evening we have a recognition program that includes 3 employee groups. First of all, it's National Assistant Principal Week. So we're grateful for the enormous contributions that our Wayne Schools assistant principals make each day to help our students. This year our celebration takes an even greater significance as we recognize all that assistant principals have conquered to help us through the pandemic and much more. The roles have evolved and expanded to include many new responsibilities. We're proud of them, appreciate their leadership and unwavering commitment to our schools. Also, April's National School Library Month. The 2024 theme is Ready, Set, Library. The library and media centers at each of our schools are a hub for all kinds of learning activities. Our school librarians and media specialists oversee all of this. Today is National School Librarian Day. So that recognizes the professionals who keep the school library in working order. School librarians spend long hours keeping it organized. They're also dedicated to helping children find resources they need to keep learning. School librarians create an environment where students can learn every day of the year. You have a proclamation that we can reach.
My folder is, oh, I do have my folder.
Go ahead here. Okay, so.
Proclamation for School Library Month, April 2024. Whereas the school library is to ensure that students and staff are effective users of ideas and information, and whereas school library media specialists' role is to provide the leadership and expertise necessary to ensure that the school library is an integral part of the instructional program of our schools. And whereas the Board of Education has entrusted the school librarian in each school to teach the skills of locating and using information through traditional resources and new technologies, to provide literature and activities to guide and encourage content and recreational reading to every student. Whereas lifelong learning begins and is systematically developed through the school library curriculum of the elementary school and secondary school. And whereas the school library contributes to the individual growth and development of all students while fostering both excellence and equity in education. Whereas the school library media specialists of the Wayne Township Public Schools have dedicated themselves to work for the quality school libraries for all students. Now therefore be it resolved, the Wayne Board of Education of the Wayne Public Schools does hereby proclaim April 2024 as School Library Month in all of the public schools and calls upon school administrators, teachers, students, and citizens of Wayne Township to recognize and support this action and to participate throughout the month of April in the celebration of School Library Month.
And lastly, National Paraprofessional Appreciation Day was yesterday, April 3rd. It's a day to honor and recognize paraprofessionals' hard work and dedication in our schools. Paraprofessionals play a critical role in supporting teachers and students, providing valuable classroom assistance, and offering individualized support for students with special needs. The district has done so much in the past few years to elevate and support our paraprofessionals. We recognize their importance by providing training opportunities to enhance their skills and knowledge. Paraprofessionals are also provided with several options for training throughout the school year, and a new paraprofessional leadership position was created titled Program Lead Paraprofessional. Most recently, a para-to-teacher pilot apprenticeship program was developed with Montclair State University for those who may be interested in expanding their skills to become classroom teachers. Currently, the district employs 197 full-time, 31 part-time paraprofessionals and 15 program lead paraprofessionals. 12 Wayne Township paraprofessionals, you are the unsung heroes behind the scenes whom we celebrate today. Your dedication, compassion, and hard work do not go unnoticed. So at this point, we have 2 presentations. So the first presentation, we have Scott Burkholder and a number of our teachers who will be working to explain a little bit more about our English language learner program. And so if you could, Scott, why don't you come on in?
Sure.
And you have your crew? Right, you have the teachers with you?
Yep, they're all here.
Okay, welcome. Come on in. Come on in. So I will get out of the way.
Do you mind if I come in to get pictures? Is that okay? Dr. Toback, is it okay if I come around and get pictures?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us tonight. We are very excited to talk to you about all the awesome things going on with multi-language learners in our community. This is a growing, diverse community with a number of students coming with multiple languages, and it's really something to celebrate. These students have been working with these teachers tirelessly to do some amazing things in the district, and we're really, really excited to share with you. In the interim, I am going to share a few things about the demographics in the district and how this program has grown over the past few years. And then I'm going to let each teacher have a little conversation about what's going on at their individual schools. They'll actually be able to introduce themselves because they really want to highlight the things that are going on at their schools. But I just want to say thank you so much to these wonderful professionals. We talk all the time about the amazing staff we have in here in Lane. I'm really happy that you get to meet the ESL teachers. These are the best of the best. Really, they do miracle work with our kids every day. So I'm so thankful they gave up a little bit of the time to share the things that they do with their students each and every day. Little background on our program. Our students, and this first slide is all students in the Wayne Township Public Schools. And for those of you guys that don't want carpal tunnel, we will post this. You'll have an opportunity to look at all the stats later. But when you look at every single student in Wayne Township Public Schools, we now have 58 languages spoken in Wayne, okay? You look at the birth countries, there are 69 different countries represented of where students were born coming to Wayne, and you also see some of the most prevalent countries where students come from. We also represent now 40 of the 50 states in Puerto Rico. So that is truly a melting pot here in Wayne. Our students are doing awesome, awesome work with these teachers. I am not going to belabor this, but I did want to post this to the website because sometimes this is a misunderstood area of education. The correct term now is multi-language learners. We are not considering English as a deficiency. These students will have multiple languages when they graduate. I'm sure we have some board members that speak multiple languages. You know that is an advantage. As you get older, jobs, college, career, being able to speak multiple languages. ESL is the actual course, so we don't have ESL students, it's the course they take. And We Data Access are some of the tests that we give to measure English proficiency. So just a little bit on the more important demographic features. Sometimes we get asked about things like, how do you capture a different country, where students come from, ethnicity, religion? We are bound by the New Jersey Department of Education. In a public school, you do not ask religion. And even some of the races and cultures are not represented because students are not given the opportunity by the new Department of Education to answer fully all the demographic questions. I say this just to understand that sometimes there are some students that we count within the work we do, but they may not be showing up on the New Jersey Department of Education performance reports, as you will. There's also a ton of additional funding that comes with these students. As recently as 2018, we only got around $50,000 for these students. We're nearly at $100,000, and when you look with the new entry students, we're well over $100,000 of additional dollars, and that's really thanks to this crew identifying students, working with them, so that that work can go into supporting those students. After-school programs, field trips, parent outreach sessions, all this is what's coming from that money, and they do a fantastic job. The goal of our program is that being multilingual is something to celebrate. Being bilingual, multilingual is a superpower. Again, it's not a deficiency. These students need to receive English instruction, but also respect their home cultures and their home languages. So in these classes, these students are able to share things from their home culture. They're able to learn English, they're learning assimilation to the United States, but they're also bringing the values of their culture and the various things that they want to teach our students. These are truly the melting pot classes of the Wayne Township Public Schools. And then there's another frequently asked questions slide that'll be posted, just goes a little bit more detail. This is really interesting that as of 2018, there was 168 multi-language learners in Wayne. As of the other day, there was 329. So some of that is new students moving into Wayne, moving into our community. Some of that is also these teachers have done a phenomenal job finding students, identifying them, and screening them to make sure they get the services they deserve, okay? And even though there's still some students refusing, because perhaps they don't want to go to a school that's outside of their school zone, we've opened 2 or 3 schools, additional ESL schools in the past few years, so that eventually no student will have to change their home school to get ESL instruction. We're on the way. But that's a reason why we continue to talk to the Board of Ed, because as we expand the program, there's staffing and support that need to be discussed. Additionally, our program is interesting that we have 183 students that were born outside of the USA, but there are 129 first-generation students here that were born here, but their parents are from other countries. I'm not going to read every one of these slides, but if you want to go back to this presentation, you'll see where the breakdown of students are at. As you can see, a lot of the students are concentrated to some school zones, and more interestingly, look at the numbers K through 2. Students are coming to Wayne. They know this is an exceptional district. Families are moving here for our exceptional schools. And if you look at the back end, you have students finishing 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade because they want to come here for a U.S. diploma. And these are students that are, tax-paying, moving to Wayne for this education. In the middle, it doesn't mean there's less students. It means this phenomenal crew is exiting them from the ESL program because usually these students are exiting around 3 years. So they come in, very limited English, within 2, 3, sometimes 4 years, they're moving right back into Gen Ed, fully English proficient. And that's because these folks here are rock stars. Within the English language department, these are actually how the breakdowns of languages are. Currently, there's 26 languages within our ESL program alone, and you can see where the prevalence of these languages are coming from. And in recent years, we've also been receiving Ukrainian, Israeli, Palestinian, Afghani refugees into town that have been resettled, and that's where you see this wide range of language. So one more interesting fact is there is no such thing as one size fits all. Out of this group, 129 have enrolled in the U.S. just within the last 3 years, and those students are all moving forward to English proficiency. In addition, 71 of our students also have an IEP. So in Wayne, we're not looking at it as one size fits all. This is a classified special education student, this is an ESL student, they're eligible for both, and the teachers work together to make sure that they're getting support. As recently as 2018, we had 8 ESL teachers, we're up to 13. And that really is due to the expansion, but also the great work they're doing to identify kids. And most importantly, over the past 3 years, 136 students moved to English proficiency. That is a huge, huge number for how many students are coming to the program. And again, I'm not taking credit. It's this crew right here. They're doing phenomenal work. The bulk of the presentation, the part that I'm the most excited about because I get to represent these folks, is them talking about some of the awesome things that they're doing at the school level. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to talk a little bit about the Early Childhood Center, our earliest learners, and we're going to work right down the line so you get to see what's going on around the district.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nicole Mysteries, and I am the ESL teacher at Preakness Preschool. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Education for providing this opportunity to the preschoolers. When I go out into the field and I meet with other professionals in the field, they always are amazed that Wayne has a preschool ESL teacher. So kudos to you for valuing this, and it really sets this district in a leadership position in terms of early childhood education. As you can see from the slide, About 25% of our preschoolers have been identified as a dual language learner. So when they're this little, we call them dual language learners because they're learning both languages simultaneously. What I do on my day-to-day is pretty amazing. I'm in 13 classrooms every single day. I'm working with small groups of children. I'm supporting the teachers. I'm supporting them. One of the other really big parts of it is parent communication. Now, as we know, we don't speak every single language that is shown. So often, I think as ESL teachers, we get the question, well, what languages do you speak? Do you speak Turkish? Do you speak Arabic? I don't. How do we communicate with these families? Well, we use platforms, and I'd like to think that I've done a really nice job of connecting families to the school, connecting families to one another. Another big part of my day-to-day is identifying children with their IEPs and just kind of being a voice for them in those IEP meetings. So, thank you.
I believe it's going to Ryerson.
We're gonna
You just
click
click.
it.
This one? I'm gonna read that. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Wendy DeGangi, and I have actually had the honor of being at Ryerson School since 1994. I see a couple familiar faces. I also have a partner, Yana Harushko, who's not here. She's actually home enjoying her baby boy for a little while longer, and then she'll be joining me again. But you probably know I service, of course, Ryerson, Randall Carter, Packanack, Fallon, and Lafayette. So altogether, we have 56 right now, multi-language learners. Our main languages are, right now, and they're changing all the time, but right now, this year, there's Spanish, then Turkish, then Arabic. So my goals for the program are, of course, effective communication through the 4 domains, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But also having the children celebrate their native culture and also learning about our American culture is so important to me. I also try to pay attention and teach using social emotional learning, building self-esteem, and respecting one another is really important in my classroom as well. And the cultural awareness, as I said, is really important. Just fostering inclusivity throughout Ryerson and also in my classroom with the multi-language learners is really big. So one of the things that we like to do is have multicultural celebrations and holidays throughout the year. For instance, I taught my children how to play dreidel for Hanukkah. We taught children about Ramadan. We carved pumpkins at Halloween, just American traditions and other cultures. I like to bring them all into my classroom, and those are the things that they really remember and come back years later and say, remember when we played that game dreidel? And those are the things that really stick and they're special. We have an ESL social club as well, which we meet in the morning with the kids, and what we really are trying to do is practice meaningful language with them and their peers in a relaxed kind of social environment. So we're playing games, we're doing read-alouds, asking and answering questions, we're practicing grammar. All of those things come together, but in a very natural environment for them. So they really excel in that environment. Another program that we have that's not mutually exclusive just to our ESL students, but also to the whole school, is our Culture Club. Again, it's to get everyone aware of all of the cultures that we have at Ryerson, and we really are a wonderfully diverse school. So we do all kinds of activities. I just wrote down a couple, like we did Carnival and Mardi Gras. We had an Easter egg hunt. We did a piñata for Cinco de Mayo. We learned all about Eid. So we're really trying to represent all of our students and make everyone aware and accepting. We also had a couple of wonderful trips, one to Ellis Island and also Turtleback Zoo, which is like a really American thing, of course, to do, take your kids to the zoo. So, as you can see up in the picture in the middle, we also do a multicultural dinner and dessert night, one at the holidays and then one at the end of the year in May. We have a huge turnout. it's really nice to see the families come, and they're so proud to bring their dish, and the children are so proud of their culture, and they love, look, you have to try what I made. It's really nice. It's very heartwarming, but we get a great turnout for that. And the last thing I wanted to highlight was we have an ESL, a virtual summer enrichment for the kids, which we do like we do themed weeks. We do virtual field trips. We do read-alouds and games and scavenger hunts, just to really keep them engaged and help them keep practicing their English, which they might not otherwise do. They might be speaking only their native language. So this way we're just getting a little bit of English in there so we don't have that slide all summer. And it works out really nice. So that's really it. Thank you. And next we're going to talk to JFK.
There we go.
Where's that?
Sorry. So my name is Serena Lintes. I work with my colleague Claire Donahue at John F. Kennedy. I've been here since 2005 and I'm very proud. This is the third year both of us are designated as ESL coaches in district. We service 48 students. We do both high intensity if they're newcomers and class support. I'm proud that for upper grades, tested grades, I offer science, social studies, and word studies. So we diversify. It's not the point of just learning the language. We push for content and academic language acquisition. Something that I'm very proud of with my colleague, since 2019, we started something called the Co-Teaching Bridging Program based on phonics support. It's called ESL Buddies. And as a culmination, we have a parent breakfast celebration. In case you detect an accent, yep, I'm bilingual. My first language is Romanian. Now that's out in the open. Continue. And yes, I celebrate my culture and I'm proud to be bilingual. We have something called Unity Through Diversity coming up end of May. With the PTO support, we are planning something amazing, again, to celebrate our amazing cultures. There is also a school climate team that we meet 2 or 4 times a year with the PTO. We develop programs to support the diversity in our school. With Title III funding, we're very happy to have a very rich multicultural bilingual literature available through the library and the ESL libraries. And I'm looking forward to what the future brings, and I'm very proud to be part of this team. Thank you. The next is going to be Pines.
Where am I heading? Okay, there we go. I'm Christina Pignataro. I'm one of the ESL teachers at Pines Lake. This is my 19th year teaching ESL. And this year I'm lucky enough to have...
Hi, I'm Alejandra Hayden. This is my first year here in Wayne as an ESL teacher.
Yes, and it's been so nice having someone with me. So at Pines, we do have 30 MLL students with various languages. And this was a first for us because we learned a new language called Shanghainese, which is like a dialect of Chinese, but nowhere near Mandarin or Cantonese. So, every year you learn something new. We have students that speak Circassian, Tagalog, Azerbaijani, Hindi. We just got a new student from the Dominican Republic. We really have a vast majority of languages at Pines.
Half of our population is also in our special education program at Pines, so we have a magnet for our LLD program. So some are in an LLD classroom and some are receiving OCR services and also get ESL on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we offer regular and high intensity ESL with both push-in and pull-out sessions. So we do have newcomers and they do come twice with us, and it's nice that we do have 2 teachers in the school to be able to do that we have the time to give those students. And then for the more advanced students, we do offer push-in, where we go into the classroom, co-teach with the teacher, so those students are getting their lessons in their classroom and we're there to assist.
We continued 2 programs this year, an ESL after the bell as well as a lunch bunch group. We know that a lot of our ESL students don't have homework support at home, so a lot of them are bringing their homework to have us help them with it because their parents aren't able to read the homework or they're not able to help them with those skills. We also realize that our students are struggling with making connections with other students because there's a language barrier. So we started a lunch bunch group that helps them with academic vocabulary as well as making connections so they have a friend on the playground or they have someone to relate to and see in specials and things like that.
And the lunch bunch actually worked out at a really nice time this year because we did it during Ramadan. So those kids were fasting, they're not eating. So they came with us. We got, they were able to be social and it was great. They didn't have to be around food and it was better for them.
And then bonded with other students. So we're also
Yes.
celebrating Ramadan.
We have a multicultural curriculum both inside and outside of the classroom. And that's with our books that we have, right?
So they have books in our library that are in English and their native language for most of the languages. And they can bring them home and then their parents can read in the native language while they can practice their English skills. And then we have little bookmarks with comprehension questions for their parents to be able to ask them and help them with reading and a nice bonding moment between them that their parents can participate in.
Although we're still looking for a book in Chinese. I don't think it exists.
Harder to find.
A little hard.
We try really hard.
Go ahead.
So we've also been doing a lot of social emotional learning, especially with our students that might be in LLD that are struggling more than a general education student. We've been practicing mindfulness daily with them as well as gratitude, doing gratitude journals, and these are also then shared with the parents. Another connection for them to bring home to their parents.
Mm-hmm. We also send home quarterly newsletters letting the parents know what we're doing in class. And the kids keep journals. We're always in contact with the parents, letting them know what's going on. We do translate everything into their language the best that we can.
And then we'll do another summer enrichment program. We've done them in the past, so hoping to continue that, similar to what Mrs. DeCangi did.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
And the middle school.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Kirstein. I've been in the district since 2002. I taught in New York City and Chinatown for a number of years before that. Middle school, it's a really transitional age for kids of any ilk. So one of the really important things for us is that just like any of the other kids in middle school is that our kids have agency, academic agency, and social agency. So the way the program works, I have a colleague, Carol Olive. She teaches the English portion where they're learning English literature and language, and I push into social studies, I teach social studies. I have a sheltered history class. I have one for intermediate and advanced students. There are 22 students in that course. I have one for the beginner students. I also do a supported study so that can help them with the other subject areas that they need help with. We just started that. And I also push into science, whatever the highest need science is that particular year. I push in. I do have a science background, so I help them with the academic language in that. One of the things that we're really proud of, we've talked about different ESL festivals that schools do. We do ours almost like a convention. The students make their own presentations and then they present to all of the faculty who come in and the other members of our community. The custodial staff comes in, the cafeteria staff comes in, the principals come in. Scott Burkholder comes in, and one of the most exciting things for the kids is Dr. Toback comes, and they present. It doesn't matter whether they are brand new or whether they've been in the program for 3 years, they sit and present in English to any member of our community that is invited and wants to come. Again, agency, it's a super important thing, particularly for middle schoolers. So that is something we're really proud of, June 7th, if you're interested. Another thing that we try to do, you can see in our picture, I'm connected with a lot of museums and different NEH programs over the summer that connect us with different programs that our students can have. So you can see on the far right there, the students are in Revolutionary War naval costumes. So they learned about that. They do a lot of speaking. Speaking was one of the areas on their state test that was a lower score than I would have been happy with, just letting it be. So one of the things we've been working on again is academic language and academic speaking. So we will do activities like this where they will dress up and then they will have to present from the language that we've been learning, the academic language, and we try to do that a lot. Do you want 20 minutes? Perfect. Okay. Something else in the middle you can see that was the presentation. I think you can see Dr. Toback there.
Did you sign off on that picture?
On the far right, you can see some of the science activities we were doing. We were actually studying Civil War technology, and the kids were doing buoyancy for some of the Civil War naval ships. So we were doing the science terms that they were learning in their science class, and we were combining it with history. We try to integrate the academic subjects together so that they use that language a lot. And on the left, the students are doing, we just did this, they did a suffragist convention where they all had to represent a certain suffragist and talk with one another and find other suffragists that had commonalities with them. So we do all these different kinds of hands-on activities. The one that we're most proud of, I think, was during COVID, because during COVID was a very difficult time for ESL students in particular. So we developed a community garden that was using seeds from George Washington's time. So I just gone to Mount Vernon, we brought the seeds in, and then the kids in their pots, they grew a garden of those different products that he grew, his crops. And then they also talked about their gardening culture, because almost every culture had gardening. And that was really exciting because Mount Vernon asked us to write an article about it. So it was really nice for like Wayne to get out there. They could see that the students are so active. And so that is what we keep trying to do. Academic language, really getting their hands dirty with it and getting kids excited about learning so that they will be encouraged to speak and continue to learn the English. Thank you. Our high school.
Okay. Hi, thanks so much for having us. I'm Maggie Holland, ESL teacher at Wayne Hills High School.
I'm Mrs. Taylor, also at Hills High School. This is my first year teaching at Wayne. I was in Jersey City previously for 11 years, also teaching high school, ESL. And I remember actually doing my interview, you were there, in 1VP, and Maggie said to me, so last year we had about 25 students, ESL students. This year, I see about 60, I think it said 40, 40 students. I said, how many students did you have in your school in Jersey City? And I said, about 400. She's like, excuse me, in your school? And I said, no, ELLs, about 430 students. That's what we had, and now they are about 500. But my point is, when my interview was in July, we had about 40. Now it's 62. We're just in the beginning of April. That's a huge increase in such a small period of time. So at Hills, I teach the developmental beginner and the developmental intermediate, and I do pushing mainly in biology. But if you see this slide there, we have other subjects as needed. For example, today, as right before I was going into my biology class to learn about genetics, one student emailed me and said, Miss Taylor, I have a history teacher. Can you come pull me out, take the library? And there I go. So a lot of times it's a split second. I need you today. Or a teacher might email us, I need you in algebra today. So we move a lot in our pushing. We are pretty much in every subject helping our students because, as I said, like they're learning genetics, right? These kids, they don't even know in their first language genetics. It's not a language that they would know. So they're really learning in English their biology and algebra and history and chemistry. Everything is new and they're learning.
Yeah, and I teach high, intermediate, and advanced classes, and I push into primarily chemistry. But again, it's as needed. I've been in business, entrepreneurship, creative writing, every class. So as the students come, we get many students who are just coming to our country in like 10th grade. And they're required to take all the same classes as everybody else is taking, so that's, biology, chemistry, and then either environmental science or physics. So we are the point people on that. So we're tasked with really getting them up and running at the high school with their computers, with all the different platforms that they're on for their math class and art class and all the classes, as well as the academic support that they need, from the get-go. We have, our number one group is our Turkish students right now. And then second would be Spanish and then Arabic, but we really have an assortment of students from all over the world. And they are absolutely amazing young people. I mean, they are such an asset to Wayne Hills High School and to the community. These students are here, they're not here to play. They are here to get ahead. They are here to learn quickly, they're impatient, they want it now. They are here to go to college and make their families proud. So our community is doing an amazing job, our high school is, getting these young people ready for life in high school and then life after that. Most of them are going to college. I do a lot of college prep work with them. We talk about what's offered, what types of different colleges there are, or if they want to go into a more practical, type of, right into the workforce. We talk about that and what kind of options there would be, but the vast majority of our Wayne students want to go to college and do. I rarely have someone who's going into a trade. So we do experiential learning also. We have an ESL festival, we do field trips. We do, my favorite project is Time Magazine Person of the Year, where they have to pick, so it's a biography project, but they have to pick someone who has made a significant positive impact on society in the past year. So they have to be alive, and they have to be, making a difference, and it's really fun. So again, we're tasked with listening, speaking, reading, and writing for these students in English, and that project taps into all those different disciplines. They do presentations, they do them on screen castify, because often in their content area classes they're required to do that. And it's really fun and interesting. This is our festival. It's always a great time. They bring food prepared by themselves and their families. You'll be surprised the number of them that are actually making the food themselves at home and bringing it in. It's very moving to see them share about their culture. And we have found that food is the common denominator. We all love to talk about food, and most of us really do love food. So it's a fun day every year, and it's a way for us also to say thank you to their content area teachers, who also work very hard to help them get through. Our math teachers, I think of in particular, are constantly, work their, some of these students, few, but some don't have the basic skills that they need, for, say, a geometry class going in, and we work hard on that. And we want to thank them, so they do that at this. Last year we went to the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island, and it was, again, a very moving experience to see these people, these young people, witness the history of our country, of accepting newcomers, and I'm Irish, so we talked about my ancestors several generations ago, and all the different people who have moved through our country and then had kids and were just walking the halls of Wayne Hills High School. We're super proud of this slide. This is only this year's seniors. These are the colleges that they have been accepted to. We got Rutgers, NJIT, College of New Jersey, Montclair State, Rowan, Passaic, William Patterson, Seton Hall, Ramapo, SUNY Binghamton, New York Institute of Technology, Bergen Community College. So they are really achieving great things. We had two that applied to Princeton. A Ukrainian young woman got an interview. She didn't end up getting in, but we could not be more proud of both of the students that applied. These kids, they know what the Ivy League is. They're kind of, really psyched to try to do that, So, there you have it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to wrap up very briefly. I do really appreciate, I know that was very comprehensive. I appreciate you guys listening to that. It's really hard to cram all of that good news in 5 to 10 minutes. And with everything you deal with the public comment all the time, I'm sure it was welcome to hear all these amazing things that are going. So I just wanted to close to say thank you to the ESL teachers for all the amazing work they do. If you listen to the details, you have kindergarten students doing all these wonderful things all the way up through that last college slide. These people are truly educational rock stars. We are really thankful to have them. I also want to thank the principals and general education teachers and all the students, all those teachers, all the staff members that support our multi-language learning population. But again, thank you so much for letting us present tonight. And one more time, thank you very much.
Any questions from the board? Well, on behalf of the board, I thank you for what you do, and it was really a great presentation and really opened a lot of eyes as to the diversity that we do have in this community. Thank you again.
Thanks for having us.
Great job, really good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Scott, great job. Thank you, great job.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to meet you.
There it is. But we will stop.
Maybe we'll just do that.
Oh, wait, so this is, do you want me to click for you, or did you want to?
Greg, come on up.
Come
Come on up.
You ready for that?
John, come on up.
Do you want me to click, or you want to click? Okay.
As everyone knows, at this portion of the meeting, we're going to look at the referendum timeline, considerations of what we're possibly going to do in the future. As many of you know, the referendum did not pass, and we understand a lot of people, many people in the community are disappointed. Here tonight, we're here for an open discussion about the referendum and looking forward. One, I'd like to acknowledge the mayor, who has joined us again this evening at the table that he sat out. It's probably the same table, by the way. A few years ago, we appreciate his willingness to participate in this conversation. Also with us is Greg Somjan and John Carton from our architectural firm. They're here tonight to help us look at the 60-some projects that we had put out, and also look at timelines if we're going to consider to go out for a new referendum. Again, the goal tonight is for transparency and input, because these projects are important to the district. And as you just saw in the slides above, when people say, well, why don't you have enough classroom space? Because we need classroom space beyond first grade, second grade, third grade, and all the way up for programs like this. So you see how our students are flourishing just from those programs. And the numbers that I saw tonight, as far as population goes in the school district, I don't care what any demographic study says, I can show you real numbers. Our numbers are going up. And where we're going to have to make some hard decisions with, and especially the elementary school, with different things. Our numbers in the elementary school, our projections of what we see of our enrollment for this year have increased to the point where we're going to have to make some tough decisions about art classes, music class, even special ed classes of where they're going to be. So the numbers are increasing. You just saw the ESL, we anticipated 40, we're at 62. And that number's not going to go down from what we're seeing. So that's why we're here, for a conversation with the community, with the town, with everybody. Sir.
Good evening.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So, the projects that we're here to talk about are still a needed project, as was just shared. And so we've been asked to come in and just talk a little about how to potentially plan moving forward. So, the first thing we wanted to talk about was just what is a schedule for another referendum consideration. The Department of Education has deadlines that have to be met in order for them to review applications, to provide feedback on not just the project, but eligible monies for those projects. Typically, that's 6 months before a particular referendum date. And then depending on how much work has to be done in advance of the deadline, there needs to be time for the professional team to meet with stakeholders, prepare the necessary documents. As you know, we started planning for the March 2024 referendum more than a year ago. And that involved meetings, it involved designs, it involved budgeting, and we submitted ultimately late in 2023 to get to a March 2024 referendum. So what you see up on the screen is that the referendum can take place 5 times a year. You can do it in January, in March, you can do it with the election in November, and then separately September and December. And each one of those has their own deadlines. November, coming up in 2024, the deadline for any application would be April 9th. That's 5 days from now, so we'll come back to that topic in a second. But if there was going to be a referendum held during the November elections, any applications that would need to be submitted would need to go on April 9th. In December, a deadline would be May 14th for a December referendum. For a January 2025, it will be in July. For a March of 2025, it will be in August of 24. And then for next November, it will be April of 2025. Now, with that said, we currently have 60 plus or minus applications that we prepared. And each one of those represents a grouping of projects. And if the district wanted to resubmit for consideration to the community some or all of those applications, the Department of Education has confirmed that the approvals that we have and the state funding that they've offered would remain intact. The only thing that we would want to do, because now everything's been pushed so much further down, is we would want time to revisit the numbers. Each one of the numbers that are included in the application are not just hard costs, which are the expected cost of construction. It includes soft costs, which are all the professionals. It includes contingencies, and it includes some market escalation. I will remind everyone that the referendum that was presented in March, those budgets had to be done more than a year before that date, because we had to plan for them, we had to submit them, and then there was 6 months for the DOE to review them. So if the district wanted to pick some or all of those, all we would want to recommend is that we have some time to review the numbers to confirm that nothing has changed drastically. The market continues to change, and we want to make sure that we're carrying as reasonable and accurate a number as possible, because as you can appreciate, whatever, even had the referendum passed this March, there is still a lot that happens post-referendum before you actually bid a project. We need Department of Education second approval for certain projects. We need to finish what are called the construction documents, which are the details in the drawing, dimensions, electrical, plumbing, mechanical information, and then we go out to bid. And so quite a bit of time passes post-vote to do that. So the fact that we're now looking at a later referendum date, we would want to check that. So for all those reasons, we don't think an April 9th for a November referendum is remotely possible. The next possible earliest would be if everyone felt like they wanted to present some or all of the existing applications, might be May, but there were discussions about rethinking some of the pieces, which would mean we want to meet with some of the stakeholders, revisit the numbers, potentially do some design work, and so depending on the extent of that, we could see any of the other options as a consideration, depending on the magnitude of what we're being asked to edit and modify.
And any changes would require a new application.
Right, so the applications we have, if we're going to keep them exactly the same, we wouldn't have to resubmit all of the applications. If we choose to change one of the applications, or multiples, it would be those applications that would need to be resubmitted and re-reviewed. You may get less state aid for that project, same, or more. It's a function of the reviewer and the edits we make, but it would only be the revised applications that would need to be resubmitted. I think we have a question?
Go ahead.
If you take my question.
Sure.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate it. So let me just go back to what you said. I just want to make sure I understand everything. If you were to go for a bond referendum in November on the November general election, you already have 62 projects that some are funded by the state, some are not funded by the state. But you confirmed tonight that the ones that have already been previously funded by the state would remain the same if you don't change those projects.
Correct.
So you could cherry pick through this list of 62, come back with a number that, well, I've suggested 100 million, and I believe you should still fund previous school, which would take 50 million out of the equation. So that leaves you with $50 million to pick out of these 62 numbers. Now, you would probably come in with more than 50 million because you can transfer based on the bond referendum between projects at the end. So even though let's say you put $50 million in a November referendum, if prices go up, you're not going to be doing all the projects that you submitted. So, but you can shift money between accounts. So you're still going to get something. And that something is going to be around $50 million. You're never going to get $170 million. I'm only giving my opinion. It's just not going to happen. The sticker shock is just too outrageous to this community.
So can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Do you have any questions about the schedule?
Yeah, I just asked, that was my question about the schedule. You're saying that you can't do November 5th, and I think just based on what I heard, you could do November 5th.
What I said was, we would recommend, as your professional team,
right,
that we have a chance to revisit the numbers in these 62 applications to make sure that they're still going to be valid in 2 or 3 years, and we can't do that in 4 or 5 days. So that's why we believe the November election would be a challenge to meet. Even if the applications, we look at them and we say, you know what, we think the numbers can last another 2 or 3 years, it would be difficult for us to do that in 5 days. We would recommend that. If the board doesn't want us to check the numbers, then there's a risk associated with post-referendum that we didn't modify a market escalation or a contingency accordingly.
And you wouldn't be able to do all the projects that you had submitted, so you'd have to eliminate some of them and transfer in between the different individual projects that were listed in the referendum.
So the answer to your question is that when the voters vote on a dollar amount, and we're going to get to dollar amounts in the next slide, that's why I want to see if those questions on the
Right.
schedule in particular, but you're voting as a community on the dollar amount in total, and the projects have individual budgets. You are correct in so much as the marketplace is very interesting in the construction world, especially today. So if it is expected that some projects will come in a little bit under budget, some projects may come in a little bit over budget, and so long as we don't exhaust the amount that was voted on by the community, it is also my understanding that some of that money can transfer back and forth. You can't do a project, even if you have leftover money, that was not on the vote.
Right, so you have to list more projects, you could list more projects than you think you're gonna have money for.
Well, no, absolutely not. Because you're telling the community you've budgeted, and then they have an expectation that you're gonna do it. So we have to go into that with a reasonable level, the word was transparency, to the community, and not say, well, you know, we're gonna present more projects, but we know those last 6 are not gonna get done if we don't have enough money. Because those last 6 might be very important to a particular group that came out and voted with the expectation.
But the board still has the authority at the end of the day, based on the bond referendum, to transfer between different accounts. And that means that if, and please disagree with me, I'm wrong, if there's a project that's not gonna get funded because 7 other projects are gonna use up that funds, the board has the authority to do that.
I don't believe you can do that completely because the state allocates funds based on the project. So you can't take, if you decide to scrap a project that was funded 40% by the state,
But you're gonna get
and take
left.
that money and move it, you can't do
The
that.
intent of,
So I don't think you followed what I said from the beginning. The 50 million that's gonna be left over, those are all gonna be state eligible programs. Every single one of them. Just like you had in the referendum that went down, you had certain programs that were not funded by the state, the new Preakness School, the bleachers. The bleachers are gone, you're never gonna get those in a referendum. I mean, that's the reality of the world. But the other projects were all state approved and funded. There was very few that weren't funded.
So I guess, you know, what the mayor's trying to say, and what I'm curious to find out as well, is we all know, after all these months, that what we need is 170 million. Can we go out by April 9th, put all those 170 million worth of projects and say to the public, we're only gonna do Preakness School plus another 50 million, and then just delete?
No. Because when you present a vote to the public, you're asking them to support whatever it is you're presenting to them. So you can't say, here's 170 million, we want you to vote on it, but we're only gonna spend 100.
That's not, wasn't the question that he asked. The question was, if you put up a referendum for 100 million, and 50 million was Preakness, the other 50 million would be funded at approximately 40% by the state.
But the question,
I'm not-
here's the
Because
question.
they're already approved.
Yes, but I'm not clear on the,
So if the budget number was 170 million, I'm sorry, if the budget number was 100 million, and you put it out in November, and you knew 50 million was gonna go to Preakness, the remaining of the projects, you would have to pick and choose out of here, and if you didn't change any one of them, you were still gonna get the 40% state
but what I'm
aid.
suggesting to you, Mayor, is you need to tell the voters which of these projects in advance of the vote.
Exactly, the board would have to decide which ones of those would meet the 100
5 days.
million.
Here's my other question, Greg. Let's say, let me pick a project.
Can you just go back to the 5 days? These projects are already approved. You don't have to submit to the Department of Education by April 9th, because they're already approved.
Correct.
So the 5 days does not apply as long as you pick projects on this list that are already approved by the state.
That is correct, but let me reiterate what I shared. It is our recommendation, based on the fact that this thing is gonna be pushed out a year or two,
Right.
that we have a chance to revisit the budget numbers, and if we come back and say, we find the budget numbers to be still reasonable, then we don't go back to the state, and you can move forward with one of those dates. If we find that one of those applications, for example, we just learned that certain electrical switchgear is now 70 weeks out from the time someone orders it. And so we may say, if you calculate by the time the referendum comes up, and we develop drawings, and the contractor bids the work, and starts construction, we could be 3 or more years out if we needed a new electrical service panel. The market may change, they may be available off the shelf, I don't know. But what we're dealing with in the marketplace is that reality.
Then that
So-
wouldn't be one of the projects that you'd want to include in a bond referendum.
But I don't have a crystal ball, Mayor, so I can't tell you
Nobody
what's
does.
gonna happen in 6 months that will change the
So I'm going to
marketplace.
tell you what happens in 6 months. If you recommend to the board that they wait, they're never going to pass anything.
Listen, my
Nothing's gonna
recommendation
pass.
is not to tell them to wait or to move forward. My recommendation is to give them the necessary guidance as a professional for them to make the decision. And all I'm suggesting is that if you want to present a vote in November, you have 60 applications from which you can choose, but we would be locked into those budget numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Right, so we could end up holding back, having a project half done and not having any funds to do it. Now, the other question, here, let's say there's 2 projects here that both receive state aid. We say, okay, we're not gonna do the one, we don't have enough money to do the one. Now that affects our state aid, because we're now putting more money into the bank. So the state's gonna say, okay, well, now I'm giving you less money because you're putting up more money.
So that's a more complicated question, because the state has what they call the FEC letter. And that letter says that each project has an amount that they've allocated towards it. Historically, they don't come back to look at an individual project if in the aggregate you have to go back and forth. That's my experience. But if you take a project completely off the table and don't execute on it, then someone eventually is gonna look at Mr. Moffat's records and say, well, wait a minute, we allocated money for this and you didn't do the project, so what's going on? Does that make sense?
So you can shift in between as long as you do all the projects.
Exactly. So if you present in good faith to the community, these are the, I'll pick the mayor's number, $100 million worth of project, Preakness plus another 50. Our intent is, we as professionals believe the budget is accurate to execute on all of those. The market will change, some will come in under budget, some will come in over budget, and if in the aggregate, we can deliver those projects, even with the state aid kind of going between some of them, so long as when we bid the project and close out the project, we finish less than, using the mayor's number, $100 million or less, doing the projects to which we committed, I don't see any issues, nor have I seen in my experience over the years. If we get to a point where these projects are not all gonna happen in 1 year. So year after year, you're gonna do it, you're gonna see how the projects start to roll out, and if at the end we say, we're out of money, we can't do this project, we just need to be aware that if that had funding in it, we have to go do some mathematical calculations to see how much of that was allocated, because the state's not gonna give you 40% for something that you didn't do.
So they're gonna try to request that portion back.
Well, they don't request it back because they're not giving you the money.
Oh,
It comes in
right,
the form of
because it
debt
comes
service
all the
aid,
time. Right.
so they just won't make a portion of the payment.
So, yeah, I just wanted to, for clarification, so we're saying 40 million roughly state aid, 50 million Preakness, and then another 50 million, which would be kind of part of, right? I mean, if we're getting to 100 million.
Right?
So you're not doing 100 million and 40 state aid, or?
So
is it
that's a great question,
You know,
because
like-
you would need to clarify that.
Right.
Because one could argue that $100 million in local tax levy is really, I'll make up a number, I don't have the math in front of me, because every project's different, is really 125 million in projects, right? Because the
Right.
state is funding a portion of it.
Right.
Or you could take the position that the 100 million is the gross number that you're targeting, which is really only $80 million. And I'm making up numbers, so
Right.
whoever's quoting me over in the papers, please don't
Right, that's what.
use hypothetical numbers, right? So it would be 80 million local share. So it's not clear
Right.
which 100 million we're talking about.
Exactly.
Is it local share or is it not?
I think it's 100 million total is what we're talking about.
Well,
But-
so-
but-
100 million to who?
80 million would be financed by,
Right, so
by the
what the
voters.
mayor's saying is 100 million with your.
Total,
With
which
state
means
aid,
plus or minus
maybe
something
20.
less than that for the local taxpayer.
Your 40% would be of the 50 million that's not Preakness schools, so you'd get 20 million in state aid. That would mean you'd be financing $80 million versus the previous referendum that you were financing about $131 million. A difference of over $50 million.
So we missed out on 38 million in state aid coming back to the Wayne residents. Do we have any indication if there's any expiry in the state aid? Like if we go out with the latest timeline here, April 8th, 2025 for a November 2025 thing, do we know that state aid's guaranteed, or will that?
So we talked about that earlier with bond counsel, and there's no expiration date that we know of in statute for debt service aid. However, the challenge is that if you wait too long and the market changes, because remember, the further you go out, we still have drawings to do and to be out to bid, then the market could change so drastically that whatever you were getting in the form of debt service aid shrinks from the 30–40% of the budgeted number to something less if the cost of inflation and stuff goes up. But I think we talked about, a few years is not unreasonable, but even though there's no expiration, technically, you don't want to just let that sit out there in perpetuity for that reason.
Right. So the contingency that we have, right? Because that's what this all balances on, is what is the contingency that we had a year ago when we did the budgeting, right? Inflation was significantly less, but there were still some supply chain issues that were going on at the time. How much of that contingency would we put into these projects? Because if we can understand what that contingency is, that'll give us a good idea of the risk that we are taking by the time moving for November or pushing out further.
Yeah, so there are two numbers. You use the term contingency, and I just want to clarify to make sure we're on the same page. Contingency to us is design contingency, which means a year from now, we haven't talked about, I'll make something up, the floors that we're going to put in, and as we start to develop the drawing, someone says, hey, we want a slightly better quality floor. So that's a design contingency that we carry, knowing that a year down the road. Then there's construction contingency, which is we have a lot of renovation work that we're doing, and when you open up a wall, the state requires us to carry a construction contingency, knowing that no construction is perfect. I believe what you are referring to is market escalation, which is how we refer to it. Okay, so market escalation is a number we carry. I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but I can get back to you. But what we were seeing is probably 1 or 2% every quarter right now for what we're seeing in the construction world, but I can get that number to you to confirm it. But yes, we're carrying something for the reasons I stated earlier. We developed a budget a year ago, the referendum was a year later, and then drawings have to be created, so we're 2 years bidding based on when we created the budget. But I can get that information.
The question is market escalation more significant now than we had back then, right? Which I believe it is. Right? I believe
Yeah,
the costs have gone up
it's
more than
creeping
we
a little bit, and it depends on the pieces, right? So mechanical systems coming out of COVID, those were the bottleneck. Couldn't get a piece of equipment.
In aggregate, obviously, we're going to look at this in aggregate,
Yeah.
and it may affect the specific projects that we would choose
Correct.
to go back to try and minimize that kind of...
I'll give you a good example. Steel was always a challenge. Bleachers, have a steel component to them. With the bridge in Maryland that just collapsed, steel is going to be more of a need to rebuild, and it will impact the marketplace. So there's an example where anything that we have that is steel related.
40% of the steel comes into that port as well. So
Exactly. So those are, and there are probably things that some school district in New Jersey is waiting for that's on that ship. So, you know, at the end of the day, these are some of the things that we want to rethink. We could submit the resume, the applications, or not submit them and go for November referendum. And, you know, in October, we could have another challenge that no one anticipated that could impact it. So this is not a perfect system, but that's why we're recommending certain things, just to be able to plan as best we can.
Okay, if we can get an idea of what that market escalation
Absolutely.
is and how that's impacted on
That's
these,
fair.
and how that would have been somewhat different now than it was a year ago.
Yep, absolutely.
Then we'll get a good idea of risk.
I think the best time to get rid of it.
Evie?
I had a consulting cost question. So there's a lot of time and effort by everyone involved that gets into the referendum, and it comes with a price tag to the taxpayer. So what do you anticipate looking over the numbers and, you know, preparing for next one if there is going to be one? And obviously you don't have a crystal ball, but just give me an idea of what are we looking at as far as spending on consulting costs. I mean, I guess for your firm alone, because I know other.
Yeah, so you're talking about if we're gonna go another pre-referendum.
Yes.
So arguably, if all we're doing is taking whatever applications exist and presenting them for a referendum, the dollar amount is zero. Because there's nothing else for us to do. The applications are done, they need to be
Best
presented.
thing we heard all night.
So looking over the
See,
numbers.
you need to hire him as your architect.
There you go.
But what if
Save
you
your
need to
money.
review them?
Right, so it depends. If we only have to review one project application, well, it could be nominal. It could be a few $1,000s, I don't know. If we have to revisit 60 applications, it would be very different. If we talk about Preakness revisiting the design, now you're talking design work. So I can't give you any real information here because
We don't
there's
know.
no direction being given.
Right.
Yeah.
But there could be cost. I mean, just,
Yes,
so if you kept everything the same, just having to verify the numbers in the least bit to make sure that things are still okay.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's a significant investment. You know, obviously we have a long-standing relationship with the district.
You said
We-
zero.
I said zero if there are no application changes.
Paris, put that down.
Get the new
Zero,
people out of here.
I heard zero.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Matt? Okay. The mayor has spoken that 170 is too much, that 100 is reasonable. Okay. We talked about, he's padded some numbers for contingencies. I've heard shuffling of money to make this work. Well, my question goes directly to the mayor. We have a list of projects here. I'm surprised you're sticking with new Preakness Early Childhood Center at 44 million. My question to you is very simple. I've listed them here. We gotta make up $40 million, $30 million based upon your numbers. What are we cutting? Please tell me.
Well,
And don't tell me, and don't give me a song and dance around this.
I'm not giving you a song and
Look
dance.
at the
It's your
numbers that
job
we're
to
cutting.
do, not my job.
No, your job is to destroy this honest and have it come back and clean it up.
all right.
So what are the projects we're cutting, please?
I don't know what the 62 projects are.
They're right in front of you on a
All I
piece
can
of
tell
paper.
you is that you were not successful in March.
So
You
what-
need to move on.
Right, so moving on.
I'm
what are we-
trying to
what are
help
we-
you.
So help us, pick them off the list right now, they're in front of you. What do you want us to cut? I'm waiting for an answer, sir.
I
What do you want
told
to
you
cut?
my answer. That's your job. That's what you were elected to do. Do your job.
Pass the buck along here.
I'm not passing
All
the
right,
buck.
all right, enough.
Do your job.
Any other questions for the
Well,
architect?
I guess we're looking at those now, so let's.
Yeah, so that's why I asked the question about the schedule, because I had the list up here. So these are what you have in the handout. These are the list of the individual projects that were being discussed and considered. The total budget is the all-in number for those projects from the hard costs, soft costs, contingencies, market escalation. These do not reflect the state aid that some of these projects might have gotten. So what you're seeing up there is the gross dollar amount that will be presented to the community. I just wanted to clarify one thing that the mayor said. You are obligated to finance the whole project. The state gives you debt service aid. They contribute on an annual basis towards your principal and interest payments. But ultimately, you do finance the whole project.
the state doesn't finance a portion of it for you. I just want to make sure, that we're all on the same page about that. So these are the projects, I'm not gonna go over them individually, they range from several $100,000, obviously, to the largest one, which is the new construction that we've been talking about at 44 million. We were asked to place that last project, the new elevator at Preakness. There was a project application submitted to the Department of Education earlier because they did have another round of ROD grants, regular operating district grants. In that case, because you had your local share, then they would have given you the cash for that project, but it got denied. So the ROD grant, that project didn't receive a ROD grant funding, so because it goes along with the possibility of the Preakness project, there was a discussion that maybe that gets included in this next question for Preakness to allow the buildings to be linked, to bring the whole building into compliance with barrier-free, since we're doing all this new construction.
Scrap it.
Any questions on the projects? Harry?
I mean, I think since the mayor's offering us help, we should take a few hours, come down to $100 million, get this at no cost in November's election. Because these 62 projects need to happen. Might take 10 years, it's gonna cost us taxpayers a ton of more money than if we go out to referendum. New Jersey provides this tool to go out and do bond referendums. So that way taxpayers don't get impacted as much. So I think it's our duty to at least come out with something, with what's already filed. And then if we have to come back again with another amount another year later, but at least the mayor's offering close to 100 million. At least let's spend a few hours in the next few days, try to get it done and get it on the November ballot.
I don't see it possible. How many people do we have that live in the city?
Right now, 55,000.
Okay, at the last election, how many people voted on the referendum?
Approximately 8,000.
8,000 people out of
Got 45,000 registered.
Okay, November is a big day. We all know that. You're gonna have everybody come out. I think you have to pick a day for a referendum that you're gonna get the town to vote. I just feel like it was such a disappointment with the 8,000 that came out to vote. I would try to hit the November number.
It's not gonna pass anyway.
No.
You're gonna have 20,000 people come out and vote. It's gonna become a secondary thing, and they're gonna see the tax increase. No.
Here's the issue I have going, trying to do this hastily in 5 days. One, how many of these projects are intertwined between each other? I need people to tell me, hey, listen, the HVAC system at Wayne Hills and something else at Wayne Hills kind of go together. I'm not going to sit here with a pen and just put lines through stuff, then find out what you did isn't going to work.
Yeah, we have to look at that because most of these projects are standalone. The only thing that I could think of, but I would have expected, and I don't know if we broke it down or not, I have to look. The one thing that jumps out at me is if there's an air conditioning project that's proposed in a building, and there was an electrical upgrade that was needed to support the air conditioning project, and if we broke that out and it's in its own application to give the board, because that was what the board requested, that's one that I think could be linked, because if you get an approval for an air conditioning project, but you don't have the right electrical loads in the building, that's a problem. Nothing else jumps out at me as being intertwined.
Something that I would point out very differently there is there's no point putting a new HVAC system if you've still got 50-year-old windows.
Look, this is
it'll work.
It's a chicken and egg thing. To your point,
all out of the window.
You could design a mechanical system at a lower load if you have a better building envelope to contain it, which is kind of where you were going with this. But, at the end of the day, sometimes you can't put all those things together and you have to select, and the mechanical systems and the ventilation may be a greater priority and the windows may not be. That's I can make recommendations, but that's a possibility.
Don, I just have to go back to the April 8th date.
Okay.
Is not the drop dead date as long as you're using the same projects that are already approved by the state. Is that correct?
You are correct. And I would just like to also remind everyone,
I'll put an asterisk at the end of that.
Thank
I
you.
know. So what is the drop dead date if you use the projects that are already approved by the state?
I'm gonna say 60, maybe 90 days before, because you have to coordinate with the County Board of Elections. That's a bond attorney question, but I'm gonna say, and because it's a presidential election, I think they require it a little bit earlier.
75.
Yeah, so 75 days before,
So are you talking August?
75 days before November 5th.
I'm not that smart.
Nor am I.
Two and a bit months.
The oldest one in the room.
Okay.
2 and a bit months.
So, one of the things that people have said in the comments that I've heard is that there was nothing sexy in this thing that made them, that they really liked. And I would say that looking through it, I don't know that we should go the route that we're gonna go, just swapping out projects and sending them back the same way. Because I feel like that's one of the reasons why it didn't pass. Like, you look at this, and let's say we're gonna go for the HVAC controls. I mean, it's $5 million for HVAC controls. That's a big number, but is there something that you can do in its place? Is there some other alternative that we can explore? Because if we just put this back in exactly as it is, with the same things that we have, only a lesser version, they're getting the same kind of things that they were complaining about getting. So I think we gotta review the ideas of what we were gonna do and see if there are other alternative ways to get the same things done, but differently.
But we have Mr. Mayor's marketing power behind us now at 100 million.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't think it's going.
I think we should probably launch that citizens committee, help them come up with,
I think
you know,
it's
the
too much
100
damage
million
done.
worth of projects.
Yeah,
Amy.
I agree. I think too little, too late. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy you're here, but I really wish you were here a year ago or at any time we had the retreat, because that's when we had a good conversation and talked about what we should and shouldn't have done and the numbers and the projects, and you know, I think that would have been very helpful. And I think the last one, I think, was maybe December or in the fall of last year when we decided to do the spring. I don't know, it was like 6 months ahead, and there was a need or want to get it done in the spring as opposed to later and not wait any longer, because we've already been talking about all these different projects. As long as I can remember, my first retreat was in December before I was sworn in, and that's when that was the topic of the conversation. So really, for me, little too late, because so much information was put out to the public and it kind of damaged our reputation and the school's administration reputation on all the things that we didn't do, should have, would have, could have done. So, you know, if you have a magic power and some kind of a crystal ball and see that it will pass, I don't know, but
Well, perhaps if you had told the taxpayers before January of what the tax impact was gonna be, there might have been things that would have been a little bit different. But to give voters 2 months' notice of what their taxes are gonna go up, I don't think that was the right way to go. So you might have had nice retreats, but nobody goes to your retreats. You didn't even get the vote of your parents. They didn't come out and support you.
I want to clarify, the board couldn't provide a tax impact until the FEC letters were received.
right.
I understand that, but still, it was January when those numbers came out, and you expected people to vote 2 months later. They were in sticker shock.
I mean,
And if you think I'm all-powerful and made everybody vote no, you're mistaken. I am not.
No, but I mean, you know, from other districts, and when we were in training in Atlantic City, we sat in on some classes on how to do referendums, because obviously I'm not an expert and I don't know. The one thing they say, that's when you do it. You do it like the 3 months or so leading into it, because that's when you have all the information. So it's not that Wayne didn't do something, that's kind of how it's done. And you know, for lack of more information getting there faster, as you know, you deal with the state, you don't get the numbers right away. So it all takes time. So we really couldn't. Everything up to that point was a hypothetical. You know, we just didn't know. So I wish we had.
They knew the numbers, they just didn't know the rebate amount that we were gonna get.
The
The
impact.
amount was released for the
The
whole.
impact on the citizen.
But
Right.
we're sitting here in April, and you're talking about November. You have a long period of time to sell the project knowing what the numbers are. If
But
you don't
I
wanna
don't
do
think
this,
it's the
don't.
same way to, I don't think going the same route is the way to go. Town
Then
spoke.
you can't just give up and do nothing.
No, I think we have to revisit it and look at it from a completely different angle.
The most cost-effective way is to do a bond referendum.
No, I think we have to do a referendum, but I think we have to revisit what's in the referendum and how we go about it. I think we have to look at it from a different vantage point. Because I don't think that the people think windows are important. They didn't seem to think that HVAC was important.
I heard
They didn't
roofs.
think that roofs were important. They said, just keep patching them. So I think that we have to look at it from a different perspective and see if there's another way to put it through. We know these things need to get done, but I think if we put it back on a ballot, I think they're just gonna say, nope, you should have done it again 10 years ago.
Anything else for your? Any question there?
It's all in your good hands.
Gentlemen, thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm
Thank you very
sure
much.
we will be in touch.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Do you want me to close? Oh,
Yeah. Moffett, resume the agenda.
There are none tonight. Happy to report.
All right, this time, this portion of the meeting is open to citizens for comment on agenda items only. Residents are asked to state their name, address, and subject matter. Comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person. Members of the public are discouraged from speaking negatively about an employee or a student. The board bears no responsibility for comments made by the public. Comments regarding employees or students cannot be legally responded to by the board. Other comments may be responded to tonight or at a subsequent meeting under old business. Do I have a mover?
Second.
Got it. Anyone from the public on agenda items? Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Good evening. How many minutes do I get? As many as the mayor? Just curious, considering the same wasn't afforded to all of you at the council meeting. Okay, why is the mayor here? I was going to address him, but he's gone. Has he brought his credit card? Is he willing to share it? He sent out a video on February 8th, 14 minutes long. He used the Wayne Alert system that goes out to who knows how many residents. No opportunity to respond. He sent out a second video on March 2nd, on a Saturday, 11 minutes long. No opportunity to respond. He used every council meeting to share his opinion about how this referendum is the worst thing to happen to Wayne ever. No solutions proffered except make it 100 million. The board received no equal time. They also weren't afforded access to the Wayne Alert system to share their viewpoint. Now he claims he had nothing to do with the failure of the bond referendum. He just sent out a video. Yeah, a video filled with hyperbole, fear-mongering, fake facts, and every reason he could come up with to vote no. Despite using all the powers of his office to get this message out to the voters, he's now saying nobody heard it. That just defies common sense. So now he's blaming the board and administration for the failure of the referendum solely. At what point do we understand this is all a political maneuver on his part? This isn't the first time he's thumbed his nose at the board and administration. The mayor has a history of doing these sort of things. There's the $500,000 for the turf fields, the graduation stunt, threats about the bus location. I believe he misses the bad old days when the party controlled the board and the hiring, not to mention the lather, rinse, repeat process of starting their future council candidates on the board. So now what? If the mayor doesn't cause the failure of the referendum, how will he take credit for passing the next? The answer is simple. He can't. My new name for the mayor, two sides, because he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. Stop wasting money on these referendums to fail in Wayne. The community and the mayor have spoken. They don't care about the schools, and you're on your own.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
I don't know, Henry, you...
Sir, your name, please?
What?
Your name?
Oh, Gabriel Naziola. I live at 1260 Ratson Road. I've talked once or twice before, you guys, you may or may not remember, but for purposes of knowing where I'm coming from, I sat where you sit for 9 years in a different town, last 2 of which as board president. So I guess you could say I have an interest in education. I think I heard in all of this discussion so far the word sell once. And that's what your job is here with this referendum. If you can't sell it, you might as well be talking some foreign language because it's not happening. The first thing that somebody has to do is take these, first of all, I think it was a delusion of grandeur to try to get 62 items accepted by the public without some background, some emphasis. I don't know. I think what you have to do is in terms of emergency view, first of all being that we need to have a new school because we're going to have a whole lot of new building units and a lot of kids, so we got to have a place for them. Secondly, by virtue of emergency status, you take these 62 laundry lists and cut them down to emergency priority. There's a roof leaking someplace, the kid's getting wet, put that in there. You're freezing your tail off in the school because you don't have a heating system, put that in there. The rest of this stuff, and again, I'm just giving you feedback as a taxpayer, you made it look like you took everything that should have been done by our maintenance department for the last 30 years and you stuck it in a referendum. That's the way it came across. I think what I would have done to make it more saleable, I'd have gone out and said to the mayor, I want to know from your administration how many single-family units we have in the town. So we can predicate based on an average assessed value for those units how much it would cost per year for the next 25 years. I would find out how many thousand condominiums we have, none of which are going to approach 229,000 and change assessed value. And figure out what the cost would be on them and establish that. What you're looking to do is get groups of people by their status that are going to go on your side. If you're thinking a guy with a condominium is going to pass and say yes to $370 a year for the next 25 years, you're sick. It ain't going to happen. Then you should go out and find out how many thousands of apartments we have and find out what the share of the assessed values there would be and sell it to the unit people by saying it's going to cost you $5 a month more in your rent, not $370, because that's what's sticking in their head, and that's why this thing failed. You didn't sell it. And I mean, I heard all this talk about, you know, this and that. There's no common sense here. Where's the common sense? How are you going to sell this thing if you're not reaching the average person in the town? I'm frustrated. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all the discussion, and nobody's saying, how do we establish priorities on 62 units? What do we throw out? And then right away when you talk about, we're going to go for $100 million, not $169 million, do you realize how that's being received by taxpayers? That's not a sellable thing. You got to talk about emergency status of the different projects, beginning with the Preakness School.
Sir, your time's up.
Huh?
Your time's up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're on the agenda committee? Yeah. Oh, motion closed?
Motion closed. Seeing no one approach.
We had some committees that met tonight?
Yeah. So the tech committee met tonight. We discussed some of the retention policies. We discussed the new district website. That'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. We actually got a little link to download it, put it on the mobile. It looks great. Should be very useful. We talked over some multi-factor authentication, getting people to be able to log in using their phones rather than directing them to enter passwords, and making that much simpler and easier for people to get hold of. We spoke a little bit about AI throughout the schools and about the usage of AIs and being able to drive some of the experience amongst teachers about different ways to be able to look for help and use AI. And we talked over the data center that continues at the moment. We're still pretty much on track with where we're going for that, and preparation for testing.
Good.
Can I ask a question? Okay. When you talk about the usage of AI, how is it currently being used and how are people trained on it to understand that there's biases when it comes with the AI? And also, do we have a policy that prevents our teachers from sharing information in the AI, especially about students, because that could become part of the general AI population of information that there is. So do we have an AI policy and training for the teachers?
There's no specific AI policy that we have. We had a district goal that was on the list of the district goals last year to be able to go through and look at AI. What we're specifically talking about here is starting to start general education within the teachers to be able to get them up to speed with what sort of AI tools are available. As far as sharing information from students and from other things out to AI, that's kind of like general policies of being able to ensure that we don't share information with students outside of the school systems to start with. In terms of places where AI is being used, I know it's being used in a few classrooms, such as the graphics arts and those kind of things, as well, where it's being used to generate leaflets and so on, but that's very ad hoc as far as those things are concerned, not specific changes of information or school proprietary information.
Don? We have, I spoke to a teacher when I was actually speaking about something with my daughter. And she mentioned that a lot of kids are actually submitting work that they've done using AI. So do we need to discuss a policy about what we're going to do if students are using AI to do their schoolwork, or do we have something like that? Because right now, there's technically, I don't think there is a policy that says if they use ChatGPT to write up their essays, that there's any kind of problem with that. It's not their work.
Julie. So that would still be a case of academic dishonesty, representing someone else's work or artificial intelligence created work as your own. So that would still be something that would count as a case of cheating.
And that is specifically the area of topic for conversation that we are working on by bringing the education, figuring out what it is that we need to do through the technology.
Because there was a reverse situation where there's a tool that the teachers use to validate students' work. And what happens is if you write your answer and actually put the question, like repeat the question in your answer, it often flags it as plagiarism. But it doesn't fully explain why it's considered plagiarism. So that's, you have to kind of, that's
Well,
something
you
you
have
need to
to-
educate
but
people in the
that's-
same conversation.
That's where you gotta get back to the old-fashioned classroom. And the teacher has to look at it, because with the plagiarism, doesn't just say it's plagiarism. It'll give you a percentage of plagiarism. It may say it's 8% plagiarism, which is pretty much, could be just your style of writing that the AI detector is picking up on a couple key words, like ChatGPT. Final paragraph in ChatGPT with everything is in conclusion. They're the first two words. That and furthermore. There are two keys of AI that teachers are taught to look at.
Honestly, for most of our teachers, when they read a student's writing, right, they've been with them all year. They've read their writing all year. So when you're a teacher, like for example, when I was a teacher, you could tell if it's somebody's actual writing, because you know how they write. They have a tendency to write a certain way. So it's pretty hard for a teacher not to know that something was produced or something was borrowed from somewhere else. Maybe in the beginning of the year, maybe there's a few days or a few weeks where maybe a teacher may not be able to tell that, but if you're in the classroom and you're reading someone's writing every day, and all of a sudden you get something that's written in a completely different style, probably because it's written with an AI device or software.
So I'll flip it to the other end. Do we do any kind of assemblies for the students to kind of?
Not yet, nobody does. What we are doing is you have essentially a year where people are trying to make sense of all this and how this all works. What we do have is also, we have Strauss Esme, a policy writing service. And so ultimately, that policy writing company is putting together some type of AI guidance. So something that we'll have to go on that might pick out specific issues related to the use of AI in the classroom, but something that they have not produced yet. So, I mean, there might be some districts that have, like some programs or maybe some ideas about it, but it's really not, it's not something that most districts are taking on completely right now, because we're not really in a position to do that.
Ultimately, what we're trying to have the conversation around is being proactive in the way that we get teachers to be involved with AI and think about AI, and so that they are prepared for being able to go through and think about the directions that we need to go.
Well, it's here, and it's going to be used, so unfortunately, it's one of those things where you kind of, kids are using it and...
But we have this acceptable use policy, so whether it's any kind of software, whether it's ChatGPT or anything else, there's acceptable ways to use it. And presenting, like I said, your work as, that was produced elsewhere, regardless of the software, is not an acceptable thing.
So I have the Finance Committee report, but before I go to the Finance Committee report, just wanted to make a brief mention that there was a budget meeting on March 26th, attended by myself, Ms. Wenting, Mr. Faber, Ms. Leidig, and Mr. Moffett, just to provide an understanding of how we do it, the procedures, and what's required for the county as far as the budget goes. So tonight, April 4th at 5:36, Mrs. Wenting, Mr. Faber, Mr. Moffett, and Ms. Leidig and myself had our Finance Committee meeting. There were no questions on the February 8th, 2024 minutes. And went through the March 26th, 2024 budget meeting minutes. There were no questions. We went through the agenda items for this month. There's a contract for jointure for next year, appropriation of surplus, various guidance for cooperative arrangements, emergent checks, emergent contracts. And there were some discussion on potential future actions, which are all from the capital reserve. We're not sure if we need that yet. Additional appropriation for surplus. The administration's going to keep us posted. We're waiting on NJDOE applications for a second round of ROD. As far as the food service management RFP, there will be a selection committee, so if any board member wants to join, there will be 2 board members along with the administration. We received 4 bids for the food service management contract. The annual solicitations went out. We're receiving them slowly from various RFPs. We talked about the referendum update. We continue to look at resources for Anthony Wayne Middle School's crack, also resources for Preakness. The architectural firm is who we're working with. And we discussed again the 2024-2025 district budget update. The administration presented a balanced and viable budget, so we're going to try to stay within the submitted. Answer trustee questions, and we went through the timeline and the process. So on April 20th, the county office is expected to approve, and we'll be able to post a user-friendly budget on the website. We're going to advertise, and there will be a hearing on May 2nd for final approval. And those are the Finance Committee.
Education Committee.
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we met tonight, Mr. Giordano, Ms. Reichman, and we talked about a couple things. We talked about 11 different policies we reviewed. We also talked about the enrollment and the enrollment trends that we're expecting in the future. We broke down all the elementary schools, and we took a look at every class just to familiarize ourselves with what is going to be going on in the future. We also talked about the DREAMS program. That's a grant program. 2 staff members will be chosen from Wayne, and they will learn different techniques on how to deal with trauma and healthy centered practices. And that's pretty much it.
Anybody else? Did I miss anybody? All right, then we're moving for the agenda. So, Mr. Paul, Mr. Patterson. Any comments on the agenda? Roll call, Mr. Parker.
Mr. Battershill?
Yes.
Mr. Faber?
Yes.
Mr. Giordano?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Reguloso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wentick?
Yes.
Mr. Prasakos?
Yes.
And Mr. Padline?
Yes.
Motion carries.
This portion of the meeting is open to citizens for comment on any topic. Residents are asked to state their name, address, and subject matter. Comments may be limited to 5 minutes per person. Members of the public are discouraged from speaking negatively about an employee or student. Board members bear no responsibility for comments made by the public. Comments regarding employees or students cannot be legally responded to by the board. Other comments may be responded to tonight or at a subsequent meeting under old business. Do I have a mover?
Second.
Giordano. Yeah.
Happy Kazan. Just a question. You didn't discuss what you plan to do next on the referendum. There was no wrapping that up with a bow. Retreat, what are you gonna do? That's a question.
Suzanne Putt, 23 Tuxedo Drive. I think what I am still trying to figure out is, given the mayor's suggestions that the referendum come in at $100 million, and you need to sit down and figure out exactly what projects you're leaving in, I didn't get the sense that he gave the Board of Education a firm commitment that he would actually back a new referendum. And that's what I came here hoping to hear this evening. Yes, he used his platform to come out against the referendum that was just up for vote, and he mentioned $100 million, seemingly acceptable, but did you actually get a commitment that he would be happy to work with you to get this township to approve such a referendum in that amount? That's my question. So, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Yes, hey, Ferris Tappan Duane, talking to you on my capacity as a board member of the Passaic County 200 Club. Just letting you know that May 7th, we're holding our annual Valor Dinner, where we will be celebrating and recognizing 17 Wayne police officers. 16 will be receiving meritorious citations. 1 police officer will be receiving a Valor Dinner. So I'd like to invite all of you to please attend. The tickets are going fast. We're actually recognizing close to 100 officers, firefighters, and EMTs that night. So it is going to sell out. So we'd love to have you all there. Buy tickets right away. pc200club.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? The old business.
So, this would go under old business. I would like the board to consider launching that citizens committee that was proposed for the bond referendum. I think it'd be helpful.
Which date? For which date?
For which date?
Yes, if you're looking at November.
Well, I think we should launch it, as soon as possible.
Anybody else? Any old business? New business?
Just in response to,
Can we
just
talk?
have-
I guess can we have a discussion?
Sure.
From his and then yours and.
I can,
Okay.
my new business would work with his old business very well. There are 3 people at this table, I can tell right now, I can lay my next mortgage on it, that they have no interest in doing another referendum, and I'm one of them. I think there's a time when you cut bait and you walk away. The mayor came out here and basically gave us a whole lot of numbers and a whole lot of, and then dumped it back in our laps and said, okay, we solved the problem. Well, here's the solving the problem. Move on. I'm not in favor of another referendum. I'm in favor of going back out during a presidential election, which one of the topics of the presidential election is going to be the economy. And when we're picking the leader of the free world, that's going to be the thoughts of everybody going into that voting booth. It's going to be 5 times the amount of people that went to this one, which I was shocked at 8,000 people came out and voted on it. In a normal off election, you're going to get 2,000 to 4,000. We got 8. We know where that came from. He doesn't want to own up to it. He walked out of the room after he got the chance to say his piece. But that's the way he apparently does things here. I think we're wasting our time. This town has no desire. It hasn't had a desire to do a referendum 4 times now over things that were a lot less money and just as important, like student safety. I think it's time we go on our own way and we figure out which one of these jobs we go for our emergency, whatever the gentleman in the back called it there, and we start doing these jobs. And if we have classes that are increased in size, we have classes that are increased in size. If we don't get to everything, we don't get to everything. If eventually, because we try to find the most fiscally sound way of doing this for the taxpayers of the town, and they said, no thank you, then we're gonna get them done, it's gonna cost the town even more. I hate to see it happen here, but I'm utterly defeated on this one. The town has said, we don't want this, you got it. We'll go about our business and we'll take care of what's gotta be here, but if something's lost, or something is cut, or something goes up in price, go talk to the mayor and go get his phone number and ask him, why'd you shoot this down? Because that was the best shot we got. I would go so far as to say is to get a consensus from the group right now, whether to stop wasting our time and move on, or whether or not we go ahead and tackle this.
Well, I have new business, but I mean, as a part of the discussion, I tend to agree. I feel like a lot of people's time has been spent on it, and it takes away from some of the routine things that we have to do and worry about. I mean, in the administration, the consultants, it came with a big price tag, and yes, they said, oh, it wouldn't really cost so much, but it costs time of everyone trying to even figure it out. Like you said, you know, what project goes with what is dependent on what. I don't know that we can do it on the flip of a coin. So I tend to agree with Mr. Giordano, cut our losses and do what's the most emergent thing we have to do and just pick at it.
So I'm not saying I would never support another referendum. I don't know that I don't know that this will get done the way that it needs to. But what I am saying is, I think we have to go back to the drawing board and think of other ways to get to the place that we need to get to, and come up with some solutions that may not be what we've considered in the past. Like alternatives to doing Preakness school instead of spending that $50 million. What else could we do? You know, what other alternatives that we've discussed some, but you know, what other options do we have? You know, doing things a little bit at a time, saying, okay, well, we're going to allocate this amount to this. You know, a $4 million HVAC system, well, you know, they're cheaper alternatives. You know, I know that we were going for the best of what we could do, but they're not going to, the town isn't going to fund it. So if you go back with this same list and they say, oh, you're going to spend $4 million on HVAC controls, they're not going to approve it again. So we have to look at what we're putting into it and what we're doing and try to see if there are other alternatives. So I don't think it's just throw it away, but I don't think it's as simple as just take these same projects and recycle them and put them back out. Because I feel like that's going to do the same thing that it did, only it's a smaller number, but it's still the same list. And you're not going to get much. If you look at Anthony Wayne for $15 million, I'm sure she didn't mention it, but he keeps saying $50 million, and then you know, you have to know that there's the $14 million for Anthony Wayne that we have to look at. So you're really $65 million in the hole. So you're getting $35 million at the end of the day that you can spend, which doesn't buy much when you're looking at this list.
So this is the way I feel. I feel that the people of Wayne voted us in to improve the schools. That's our job. That's what we do. Whether we come 1 night a week, 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, that's our job. I'll never stop trying to improve our schools. We are aware of the different challenges that we face. Maybe we didn't sell the referendum the way we should. Maybe the township is telling us we need more information. We need more information before we commit to that kind of money. Okay, I understand. We hear you. And it's so great that this gentleman came in today to voice his opinion. But you voted us in to get results, and I think that we owe it to the town to try again. That's my opinion.
I agree with Barbara, and obviously we have to do something to find a solution, but, you know, agreeing with Mark too, is there's probably a lot of different solutions that aren't in here, right? Especially with the Preakness school, it's a lot of money. If we don't touch anything on these to change them, we have until the middle of August to potentially resubmit some of these. So from now until the middle of August, we can look at all the other alternatives we have, and potentially that Preakness school could be off the table, and we can go for whatever the other items are that we need. It's not gonna cost us a lot of money, because we're not changing anything. If we don't get the votes in November, we don't get the votes, but it didn't cost us anything. If we get the votes, we get the money, right? And we can look at other options to be able to solve the Preakness school issue.
Right. Bill, how much sunk cost do we have into this referendum, and how much, if we went for November, would we need to put in as cost approximates?
We put in a little under $500,000 into this process to this point. You have a lot of cost, and without guidance.
If we don't change anything, if we ignore the market impact and contingency and all of that, we didn't change anything, we just went out with another question, how much would that cost us?
Off the top of my head, you're gonna have to pay, you're gonna have to pay professional services if you're gonna review the process with them. If it's just plain, you have the cost of the election, which is less than what we spent. We spent probably around $35,000 on that, so it would be less than 35 to just, if you had to package it up and go, that would be relative cost, just for the election.
So,
and you heard what.
So some bond council work, some election work,
top of
but
that,
maybe 50 or so.
Yeah, to me, you would probably pay less than half of that 500.
Yeah.
So I would say south of 300,000.
Okay, so if we did that, and then we just split up the question so that it was, this is just Preakness, we want just Preakness, just vote for this. Question 2, this takes you up to 100 million, 80 million of taxpayer money, whatever that is. And then question 3, this is everything else. What do you as the community, not what does the mayor want, not what do we want, but this is a breakdown that gives them an ability to be able to go through and say, this is how much we want to spend on fixing these. Even the mayor believes that we need Preakness at least, which means that at least we would get Preakness out of this. How much he is willing to put behind this and push for himself, that's his decision to be able to go through and say, vote for 2 questions, not the 3rd. But at least we will get out there in a way that would enable us to be able to move forward with this for relatively little cost. Now, I am still worried, and I think we need to get an idea of what the market impact of that is and how much risk we would be taking on for those things, right? Because that will really tell us whether or not it's worthwhile going for this for any of these projects, or which projects are more risky that we shouldn't go for. But I think that might be an approach that's worth discussing.
So I'm holding the mayor at his word. At the town council meeting, he offered his help to the Board of Ed to get 100 million done. So, I mean, he didn't commit here, but, you know, that's what he said, you know, town council, channel 77, everybody can see it and live stream it. So, I mean, I think we owe it to the children and the staff to get another crack at the bond referendum. It's gonna cost us money, but it's not only gonna cost us money, it's gonna be cuts to services for children, cuts to staff. It's gonna hurt people, and not just monetarily. And, you know, Mr. Mazziola came up here and said, you know, we threw everything in the kitchen sink. I mean, yeah, that's how you maximize the state aid that we're supposed to get here. Little Ferry had an approximately $38 million bond referendum, and it cost the average home $600. Now, think of the average person that lives in Little Ferry and the average person that lives in Wayne. The average house here was $370 cost. Little Ferry voted yes, Wayne voted no. So, I don't want to hear this about sticker shock anymore. I mean, you got to look at, you know, apples to apples. So, I mean, I think we need to come back, and whether it's 3 questions you know, I think we still need to explore this summer. I think, you know, we got our work cut out again, and, you know, we've got to give it another crack.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So I had a question, and maybe this has been discussed at some point before, but I don't know because I haven't been here that long. Corporate spot, so as you know, I've talked about the bleachers, and I still think that safety is very important. But maybe we don't have to put it in through the referendum, but we can shop around, and I don't know if it has been done with districts, but for corporate sponsors. And you know, I don't know if there's an RFP that has to be done or if it was ever explored, but maybe there's some companies, local companies in Wayne who would say, you know, we really value the safety of our children. We love coming to see the Friday night lights, and maybe this is something that we would want to participate in. So I'm just putting it out there as a suggestion to entertain, and maybe it's a possibility and that would be taken off the taxpayer.
Right?
No, I'm good.
Something to say?
So there's that question. We have a Bruce there. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I did have something to say, but if you want to go ahead. So I just, obviously the failure of the referendum was very upsetting. There was a tremendous amount of time, effort, really years of work that went into it. So at this point, I mean, just from my own perspective, obviously quitting is never an option. You know, we always have to move ahead. We always have to do the best we can. But I also know, like, if you're in the business world, or if you're, you know, like really looking at a setback in your life, there's kind of this time period we take to do kind of like the autopsy, where you find out exactly what went wrong, why it went wrong, what other people were thinking, form focus groups, do things to help you really understand what the issues were. So we've heard some people here at board meetings, and they pointed out what they thought was wrong with the referendum. We've heard opinions from other people, we read things online. But I guess the whole point is that moving ahead hastily is not a best practice. That's just not. It's not, it wouldn't be acceptable in any other organization, and I don't think it should be acceptable here to just move ahead hastily with something that we aren't really sure about, that we're not necessarily behind, that we don't know the details, we're not sure how it's going to play out. So we do have some time here. I don't know, I'm not sure about if we can make any other timelines. You know, can we put something together by August? You probably can do that. But there's a lot of other things to be considered. That also means that, like you're saying, Mark, any other thing that we do, right, if there's any changes to these plans, if there's something else we do at all, it's like a roller coaster ride. You go, you get in line, you take your ride, and if there's anything different, you gotta go back of the line again and start over. So that's how the Department of Ed works. And that's what would happen, any other change. And so it's unusual, I think, for a board to move ahead with another referendum without a hook, without something that will attract the voters in the community to vote for the referendum. There's usually something different. And if there is going to be something different, then we start the whole process over again. It does take 6 months, and there's absolutely no way to make the November deadline. So we do have time, we do have some things to think about, but that's really it. Is it realistic to think that we would move ahead with the referendum with absolutely no differences? And that's a question we have to think about over the next few days and make sense of that. But I don't know exactly what the best practice would be in a situation like this. I was hoping not to face it, but moving ahead hastily isn't it.
I agree with you, Dr. Toback. I'm concerned about hastily just making a decision and taking the red pen to it and cutting through it. All right, there's consequences to everything. And to try to just shove it through and get it done right away concerns me. I'm on board for trying to get, because we don't have much choice, folks. All right? We heard tonight that in some schools, OT and PT will be on the stage in the cafeteria, because we have to have classrooms. All right? We've been through this rodeo before in this district. All right? Same thing. Art on a cart, music on a cart. Going to be common in every elementary school, just about. right? So, yeah, these are the consequences of the referendum going down. Unfortunately, when when it was being put out there, we weren't allowed by law to make those comments. Right? We can't give doomsday comments. Well, it's not a doomsday comment. The comment is reality. And this is what's going to happen. You're going to see the numbers shortly. And again, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, take all your demographic studies you want, throw them out the window. I have real hard numbers now. You saw it tonight with ESL. You're going to see it when the projections come out. And we all know what happens come another month or two, come July, all of a sudden, the phone in the elementary school is ringing. Oh, I want to register my child. I want to register my child. It's happening. And we've got to do something about it. And I'm sure Mr. Nuzio left. Let's see. My comment to Mr. Nuzio is, we didn't pick the $100 million. The mayor picked that number. So don't put that on our plate. The mayor picked that number. So, I don't know. But I think we can go back here now, we regroup, we've heard what the community has said. I think November is a long shot right now. I really do. And I think to what Mark said, what we need to do is, maybe we need to reimagine some things and say, hey, listen, maybe we need to look at something outside the box here. All right? But I'm not going to make a decision tonight on this. There's too many things that got thrown at us from the architect in 2 meetings I had with him today. All right? And with the administration. There's too much there. I'm not going out for a project that I looked at costs a year ago, and then I'm going to be building 2 years from now. That scares me.
Irresponsible.
Absolutely, 100%. You want to talk about irresponsibility to the taxpayer? I take that as number one. Oh, well, just cut something else out and put the money to that. Come on. And you want to talk about credibility? Then there's none. And it's unethical as well. But I think we regroup, come back as a group in May, and I think talk to the administration between now and May, and then in May we come back, we have a meeting just about the budget, wrong thing, about the needs of this district and how we can go about getting them for the children. And look at it that way. And I agree with Harry, we'll get the Citizens Committee back up. He'd be happy to chair it, so it's wonderful. And we'll go from there.
Congratulations. Congratulations, Bob. It's here.
Congratulations. You had it.
Well, I missed that part.
So then, let's do what we'll take a look, administration will do their homework. We have to get the budget to bed now. I mean, we're pretty well there, we're in the home stretch now. And once we get that done, we can take a breath and then get back into what our needs are gonna be and what we're gonna have to do to meet the needs of the students in this district. And fast. Because, let's face it, any project, even, you waited to November, you're probably looking, those condos are gonna be built on Valley Road well before we put a shovel in the ground. So, any other comments? Take a motion to adjourn. Or John, do you need any from your end tonight? Okay.
New
business.
New business, go ahead.
Sorry. So, since we have a whole bunch of new board members, and I've never actually had the pleasure of having a training by Strauss Esme and kind of talking about policies and the process of how they are developed and when the changes come up, how I think it would be beneficial for this board to have them come in and give us a presentation. I don't know if it's like an exec because it's a training type of a thing, but if we...
Public.
Public, okay. So, but something like that, if we can get on the books, it would be wonderful.
Next meeting, we're gonna have New Jersey school boards in.
Okay, good.
For that, and that's a possibility. We'll take a look and see if we can schedule that and when.
Yeah, I know when we met them in Atlantic City that they said they would be willing
they
to
go.
come in. And-
Yeah, they'll come in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
On the policy.
yeah.
Next would be also put a guest coming.
yeah, I know. Next board meeting, prepare for a long night. We have a lot of guests coming. Motion to adjourn.
Second.